Okay, share screen. Great. So as always, welcome. I'll do the preview because most of this presentation was developed by not me. So I'll get to speak first. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We're going to be doing a review of the wonderful new things coming up in Spring 22, which should be rolling into your production orgs any day now. And so with that, of course, we'd like to welcome anybody new. We'll introduce ourselves. We'll talk about release notes. We'll give you time to ask questions, and we'll say goodbye. Really, really fun evening ahead of us. And of course, it is being recorded, so we will share it on the Richmond Developer User Group YouTube page once it is done.
For the record, we're talking about the Spring 22 release notes, not the Spring 20 release notes.
Did I say 20 or did I?
No, but I did. So I did. Okay. I'll own
okay, now your error is recorded.
Absolutely. So,
okay, and with that, you get to introduce yourself, John, to anybody who is here who doesn't know you.
There you go. For those who don't know me, I'm John Daniel. I am a Salesforce architect. I work for a company called Steampunk, based out of Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Oh, I'm next, I guess. My name is Ohad. I work for Praxis. We're also a Salesforce consulting group, as it turns out, there's more than one. I've been in Richmond for about, 4 years now. I guess over 4 years.
No, it's kind of 4 years.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I'll make that up. Whatever. And Lacey.
Hi, my name is Lacey Hancher. I'm a Salesforce solution architect. Very recently started freelancing and focusing on a startup venture using Salesforce. And I am one of the admin user group leaders, and I'll go ahead and knock it on over to the other one.
Hi, I'm Adam. I am the COO at Praxis, so I get to work with Ohad every day.
I keep hearing that name, Praxis. Must be a really great company.
It's magic. I am newly back to Richmond. I went away for a couple years, like a blip on the radar, but I have been back since September, and it's good to be back in RVA, and it's good to see all of your smiling faces, and even the ones who aren't smiling.
So glad to see you.
But everyone's smiling, so it's good.
And your picture is a little distorted, but that's okay.
It is. My face doesn't really look like that, but that's,
Yeah, I did the best I could.
Your best is not good enough, John. All right. So we're going to start today with the admin side of things, talk about new admin-ish things that came along. And with that, we'll continue to talking about developer-ish releases. And I'm saying ish because we all know that developers love flow as well. And admins should also know what developers have. And so admin is not only for admin, developer stuff is not only for developers. And with that, Lacey, I'll hand the reins to you.
I worked on this a lot with Adam, so.
Or Adam, if you want to talk. Yeah, I can talk because I know some of these things.
Yeah,
sure. So with this release, auto layout is now generally available. And I know what you all are thinking, Adam, this has been around for a long time. Apparently you too were looking at the 2020 release notes, and that's not true. While I was looking at the right release notes, auto layout has been out for a while, but it's been in beta. As of the spring release, we are now officially in GA. And to celebrate that, Salesforce has decided to make auto layout the default layout when you create new flows. I know I can see it on people's faces. Lacey is really just so excited about this change because now you'll have to toggle back to the non-auto layout or the freeform if you actually want to build a freeform flow. So great changes for everyone.
I love auto layouts.
I'm getting used to it as well. If you haven't tried it, you should give it a fair shake. They have done a lot of work to it. Yeah, definitely try it. If you're not used to it, go build a flow and see how auto layout works for you.
I will. I mean, it's not perfect. First of all, there's definitely some scenarios that it can't handle. And there are some scenarios where the auto layout is funky, like when you connect the same, like two different nodes to the same endpoint. Sometimes it will be really funky. But I have cut off my flow development time by half, because I used to spend about half of my time trying to make the lines align and be straight.
That is true. That is a fair
And so
point.
that time is gone. And just for that, I love the auto layout.
Yeah, but
Cool.
you know, there's that whole flow art aspect of it, you know, the creating
is
of
true.
the flow art. You know, you'll miss that, I promise you.
Yes, yes, you're right.
It's
And I
true.
will tell you that I've seen some of this flow art by flows developed by other people, and I prefer not to. Let's just say that.
All right. Well, now we can all use it.
What,
It's
Lacey, what is
officially
that
GA.
face? I'm
What?
just saying that I've seen some people create some crazy looking flows.
You know,
Yeah.
you have to allow people to express themselves artistically
It's true.
on the flow layout of a back-end system like Salesforce.
Exactly. Draw drawings with flow layouts. I like that.
All right, let's move on. Okay, this one I'm actually a huge fan of. So there is now the Flow Trigger Explorer. And so what this does is when you are building a record trigger flow, you can now explore and look at all the other flows that are also triggered by the same object. And so when you're in the flow, you'll now see on the start element a new link that says Open Flow Trigger Explorer for, and then the object that's triggering it. You can also get to the Flow Trigger Explorer from the main flow page. And over on the right is a snapshot of basically what you're seeing. So it'll show you the object and then the various triggers, either fast flow updates, which we know runs in before insert, or actions and related records, which runs after insert or update. You can also see items that are running asynchronously. So everything that, again, is triggering based on that object will now show up in this Flow Trigger Explorer. I think this is huge. This helps with doing forensics on an org and trying to figure out all the things that are happening. So definitely a big improvement here. I'm a huge fan of this new screen.
There's been talk about this kind of page for years, literally years. And one of the things that I've heard being asked many times, and that Salesforce continuously says, you know, yes, that's a great idea, is to do this thing, but for everything that could touch an object. So be it triggers, be it flows, workflow rules, and process builders and all that. I don't know if this is the first step in that direction. I don't know if with process builders and workflows going away, it's not even going to be meaningful anymore. But you know, there's definitely some other things that could touch and update objects. So it would be really great to see it all in one place.
And just to clarify, this is only looking at flows that are triggered, or is this looking at flows and triggers?
This
Only
is just
flows.
flows. Yes. Yeah, just flow.
Any questions, anybody? Feel free to stop and interrupt and ask if you see anything that you want to know.
So
And
to get to that screen, you've got to actually start a new flow.
No,
You can actually get to it from the main flow, just landing page.
Oh,
You
okay.
can-
if you
you
go
can
to
get to it
setup
from
flows, there's the Trigger Explorer on the right top side, right
Yep.
next to the new flow button.
But it's
Okay,
also
so-
bound to the flow start option on all record trigger flows.
Gotcha.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Good stuff. Translate and customize button labels and flow screens is now GA. So again, this has been out for at least a release or two, but now we're officially GA. This is huge. So just the simple fact that you can now relabel your buttons at the bottom of a flow screen is just a big thing. So this has been a long time asked. There were some amazing solutions on unofficial Salesforce that helped us work around, but you know, now we've got one less third-party tool that we have to kind of keep in our toolkits, because Salesforce has given us a really great ability to do custom labels, translate labels, and then bind them to, you know, the proper action for that flow screen. So big stuff now, GA. Again, it's been in beta for a couple releases. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to test it out.
Question around the deployment of the labels and the translation. Is the translation part of the actual flow XML metadata, or is it separate like the other translations?
I honestly haven't looked to see.
I think it's
it's
Translation Workbench that you use for that, but I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, because Translation Workbench is you end up you end up exporting it and treating it as a separate piece of metadata, and so you have to make sure that you push that out.
I believe it's part of the other XML.
Yeah,
the
We
flow
did
is-
it in a project.
Okay,
Cool.
even better.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good quality of life changes here on this. Definitely a big
Yeah.
fan. All right. I love this one too. In fact, this one might tie for my other kind of biggest exciting thing about flows. Are you reading this? Are you seeing this? You can define the run order of record trigger flows for a given object. So this now combined with what we looked at a few minutes ago, where you can actually look at the flow triggering of, will help you create order of execution across your flows. Now, I don't have the slide here, but something important to understand from the release notes is they did update some of the order of execution where flows fit in with some other things. So make sure you are aware of the most up-to-date order of execution that Salesforce is providing. But again, this is just simply, it's a numeric field on your flow when you're saving or editing. And if it's a record flow, and that could be a fast field update or actions and related records, you can define the trigger order, and that will tell it amongst all of the other flows that are running in the same context, when do you want to trigger this particular flow to run?
absolutely.
I think it's very cool.
Adam, have you tried setting that where you set it like 1 at 10 and 1 at 20 and 1 at 30?
Not yet, but we've got definitely some use cases where we'll be testing this out, but I haven't really gotten too deep with this either.
I mean, as a general rule, I would absolutely take that approach of 10, 20, 30, so that way you can always inject things
Correct.
Right.
at 22 instead of having to reorder everything else.
Sure.
Right. Yep.
I'd be kind of curious what happens when you have two of them with the same trigger order. What happens then?
I'm sure there's a relevancy.
The end of the
secondary.
world.
Yeah, it's like dividing by 0. It's just, that's it. It's done.
Don't do it. The world will end.
Yeah, no, because seriously, what I'm thinking about is you could have triggers in a very large environment with, say, lots of packages or lots of development going on. You could specify, everybody could specify a 10 against, say, the account or something like that. And unless there's some sort of coordination amongst all the development teams within that org to, everybody gets their own specific trigger order, then you could overlap, and then there could be some interesting thoughts there. Definitely.
Yeah, I would imagine that in most small orgs, this might be over.
Oh yeah, this would be yeah.
But obviously the idea here is you have the ability to have governance and the ability to impact this control and to have more thought put into this, right? So you don't have to, but you can, which before you couldn't, even if you wanted.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, I think. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Okay.
On the Trigger Explorer, don't you have the order on there?
I was just thinking the same thing. It didn't show, and I wonder if it's sorted by it.
That's a good question. I don't actually know what the sort is here.
I thought I saw something about how you can either change the sort order, or if you click the down arrow, there's something you can see it from there, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, let's jump back. Keep going.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yep. Okay. So this is actually a little bit of forward looking. So 2-column flow layouts will be superseded by multi-column. So again, this is a feature that's been around for a little while. So right now you can open up flows in 2-column. And in winter 23, which is the end of this current year, 2-column layouts will basically be ignored. Now you don't have to go in and refactor all of your flows, but the old 2-column URLs where you could just build a flow screen that was straight down the page and it would split it for you, it's going to ignore that going forward. So at some point you will want to go in and actually take advantage of their elements on a flow screen, the sections, and actually build out your flow screens so that they are not just relying on the fact that flow will split the screen into 2 columns for you. So again,
I've loved the sections component for. We have some scenarios where flows will open in its own page, right? And then it always sprawls all the width of the page, which doesn't always look great. So I've even used the section component just to have two sections, one really wide and one narrow, just to control like how a full screen flow looks.
Yeah. And what's great too is that that section you can actually apply your conditional visibility to. So instead of having to do a whole bunch of conditional, visibility logic on individual components, you can drop everything into the section and then make the section conditionally visible.
Yep.
And then the last thing is because it's using the Lightning CSS or the Lightning design systems, it will be responsive. So there's less you would have to do to make sure that it looks okay across mobile devices and form factors. So definitely cool stuff. No pause for alarm here, cause for alarm. Just be aware that that 2-column, that parameter and the flow URL or just, by setting up the page will be ignored coming up in the winter 23 release. All right, moving on.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Sorry, did I skip one?
There we go.
Look,
let's go back. All right, so this is in pilot, and I'm super excited about this. This is a pilot where you can make custom screen components react to each other in the same flow screen. So I think this is a very interesting pilot. If you have a good use case for it with your AE, definitely reach out to them. We can kind of see here the knowledge they give us is basically a flow screen where the user searches for a knowledge article. So you can have the user enter a string and a text component, and then a custom knowledge article search component that is also on the same flow screen will update based on the user entering the text screen or a text string into the text component. So this is big, cool stuff in pilot. I really hope to see this, get betaed this year, but I think this is definitely something that if you have a use case, reach out to your AE and go ahead and try to get it on this pilot.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is a big downside of sometimes selecting flow as a technology for a solution, because in a scenario where you need to be able to search for something and see the results right away in the same screen, for the most part, you can't do this with flow. And so sometimes you need to create Lightning components just for that purpose, or you kind of have to split the search into one screen and the results in another screen, which you can do, but again, doesn't really provide a really great user experience. And full transparency, there are actually ways to already do it, to have components talk. And in fact, there is one unofficial Salesforce component, that if you put two of them on the same flow screen, they can talk to each other. But it's pretty hacky, to say the least. And I'm happy to see this becoming more of like a feature built in of the technology.
And it's also good to remember that right now there will be some limits, and I don't know all of the limits, but we're really looking at standard components where you have a custom component that's listening for that standard component on the flow screen. So we're not talking about just any two arbitrary flow screen components communicating. This would still be something that would be custom, that's developed to, again, listen for an input from a text or a number or something like that. So again, I think a good step in the right direction, and still, something that today is, to Ohad's point, hacky or just not possible with flow. Cool pilot. All right. Converting workflow rules, and yes, you read that right, workflow rules to flow with the Migrate to Flow tool. So Salesforce is providing a tool that will take your workflow rule and will turn it into a flow. I have not personally used this, and my typical kind of warning with things like this is just obviously do it in a sandbox and check to see what the results are before you start going nuts in production, converting a bunch of things. So, but definitely a cool tool.
Especially considering flows are going at workflow.
Right?
Of course not. Nobody would do that.
Okay, good. I just didn't concern me.
I never develop in production for any of my customers, but I always develop in production for practice.
Yes, that's actually a true statement, everyone. Yep, so converting. There's also going to be a process builder to flow conversion tool, which should be pretty direct. And in case you didn't know, when you build a process builder, you are actually just building a flow.
So as far as end of life for workflows and process builders, they haven't announced that part of it yet. But
they did.
Oh, they did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't remember, winter 23. You will not, winter or spring 23, you will no longer be able to create new workflow
Okay.
rules. I think process builders are the same time. I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, it's coming up pretty
definitely
soon.
advertised somewhere there. You won't be able to create new ones. And I don't think they necessarily said end of life like wouldn't work anymore.
Probably go like S controls, you know. S
Yeah.
Yeah,
controls are
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam,
New-
you mentioned that there was going to be a tool to convert process builders. When is that coming?
I thought it was in this release as well, but I'm now thinking that they might have pulled it and it's just the workflow rule conversion tool. But I know it was one.
That's all
Yeah.
I've seen.
Okay, but it will happen at some point. Safe harbor. I don't know when, but it'll.
And
Yes,
we're
it-
we're definitely at feature parity between flows and process builders, right? Or
Pretty close. I mean, obviously,
is there anything you can't do in flows that you are able to do in process builders still?
not that I'm aware of.
don't think
no.
anymore.
Yeah, I think when
Yeah,
record
I
trigger
think
flows came up, it was sort
Record
of like,
trigger, no,
well,
record trigger flows still had some gaps. So
right.
You could have record trigger flows, but there was a problem. You couldn't compare to prior value at the time. And there was something else. And I think both of those things that I was aware have been since.
That's all been
plugged.
yeah. That's all
Yeah.
been fixed. Prior record now
Okay.
exists when you're doing a record trigger flow.
Cool.
What about approval processes?
You can create and call approval processes via flow. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you asking when are they going away?
Yes.
Oh,
They
when are
have
they
not
going
announced
away?
anything. Approval process is one of those other tools that have not seen any love in 753 years.
It's true.
But
Roughly.
what I've heard, and I will say this with a big caveat because I have been meaning to, but I've not gotten to play with it at all, is that the new Flow Orchestrator is going to kind of be the next generation of approval workflows. But I don't know if that's like an official word or anything like that. So take it with,
I mean,
a
the
lot of
last,
salt, a lot of grains of salt.
Yeah.
Isn't the orchestrator an add-on product right now?
No, I don't think so.
Or is it going to be? What else?
I believe there's a basic orchestrator and then there might be some advanced features at some point, but it remains to be seen, I think.
Yeah. In other words, approval workflows are still, we don't know is the short answer.
Okay. All right, here's another big one. MFA is coming. Hopefully this is not a shock or surprise to anyone. If it is, I'm sorry that you had to hear it from me first. So what does this mean? So starting February 1st, and as far as I know, that date has not been kicked out. So if anyone's heard anything else, please keep me honest. Starting February 1st, customers are contractually required to use MFA when logging into Salesforce. We have a link to an MFA FAQ for those that like acronyms. And there's also a link to get some details about the multi-factor authentication assistant. I would take some time, make sure that you're familiar with all of the information on the FAQ. It talks about, from an admin perspective, setting things up. It goes through SSO and MFA, talks about the different options. It again kind of reiterates the dates, and it's a little bit of a soft launch in terms of kind of, how they're rolling things out and enforcing it. But yeah, one way or another, MFA is coming. And even if that February 1st doesn't restrict users from logging in without MFA, everyone is required at that point to have MFA. And it will not be too long, I imagine, before they start preventing logins. At a super high level, you don't have to use the Salesforce Authenticator. You can use an external authenticator, or this is a really great time to look into SSO if you are currently maintaining 2 sets of credentials or more at your organization. Now's a really good time to look into SSO as well.
But this is limited to the production environments. Is that correct? Or is it just affecting sandboxes and DE orgs and other things like that, right?
I
don't
thought
know
that
about-
across the board.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what
know
I
about
heard.
DE orgs, but yeah, as far as I know, it's any customer environment and the organizations tied to that environment, including sandboxes.
I have
about
seen
Scratch?
cases where certain orgs have been granted extensions. I think the longest I've seen so far is like August. of this year. So, it's going to be, and, doesn't seem to be a consensus on, any hard stop, that it's
Yep.
mostly contractual at this point.
Right.
Yep.
And I think, Carrie, you raised your hand. Did you?
John's question was mine.
Okay.
The mind reader.
Perfect. Yeah,
know
I'll be
about
honest,
that.
there's still some ambiguity. There is a group out on the community, the Trailblazer community specifically for this. We can get a link to that, make sure everyone knows how to engage with the PMs. But, again, February 1st is the target for get everybody on MFA, and then eventually it will be enforced and logins will have to take place. So,
By the way, in case you don't realize, February 1st is a week from tomorrow.
yeah, it's not long. So
just so you
almost
know,
there.
because I know with COVID,
And I mean, it's
time is
not
not
with the
opening. So I just want to make sure people know when they are.
Yep.
I mean, and it's outside of the actual release windows.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. Yep. All right, let's keep
Um,
moving.
There's actually one more thing. So first of
Okay.
all, a small note, consultants are very concerned.
What? Oh,
Concerned about this change because in many cases as a consultant, you get to share one account across all of your customers. So there's a lot of conversations around consultants. How are you going to use this kind of shared account with customers? And there's a bunch of different ideas and solutions that others have found, and you can Google them or find them in the Trailblazer community. Another thing that is not, we didn't note it here, but I just remembered, is that if you're a consultant, you might be used to using those quick login links that pass in the username and the password as parameters to the login page. And those have been the best thing for consultants.
They don't work.
That's it. Spring 22.
Spring
So you can
22.
still log into production org using those links. But once your production org gets into Spring 22, that will no longer work. Why are you saying shh, John?
He doesn't want it to go away.
no, that's on slide 28.
Oh, never
Oh,
mind.
it is? Oh, never mind. Damn it.
Well,
I
and
I missed it.
one other
Sorry,
thing I'll
John.
mention.
Go for it.
One other thing I'll mention
Forget
is
what I said.
there's also a big impact here for anyone who has an integration but does not have a specific integration user that's flagged as an API only user. So if you have integrations and you're using a standard user login, there's going to be some issues when MFA gets enforced. So
I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right.
yep, definitely something. So do an audit, know what users are using integrations or being used for integrations, I should say.
Right.
Cool. All right, next slide. Hey guys, Einstein search will be on by default. You don't have to do anything. And even if you didn't want to use it, it will be on by default. And to be fair, if you haven't tried Einstein search at this point,
Shame on you.
I don't want to say shame on you, but it really, it's pretty good. So it'll be on by default when everyone turns or their org gets updated. I honestly like Einstein search. I do think it's actually a better search experience. So it's time, and Salesforce agrees.
And it's enough with those annoying pop-ups. It's
Yeah,
time
those
to try
pop-ups.
Einstein search.
Yeah, that one will go away at least.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. All right. Analytics updates. I love this too. This is a great quality of life changes. So what we're looking at here is the new screen when you're creating report types, or not creating report types, creating new reports. How old has that screen been? That's just that one long search thing, and you've only got limited categories. And why does it even exist? Well, there is now a new create report screen. You still have kind of the same category, but you can look at recently used report types, and you can actually dive in that on the right-hand side. And when you highlight a report, it will tell you the report type, the objects, other reports that use that type. A lot of good context information. Again, this screen has needed some love for a while. So
And you can hide report types.
you can hide report types as well. So good stuff. Again, just a nice little quality of life thing here for all of us who build reports.
So you can hide based on some criteria, hide from specific users, or just ignore them completely.
Great question. I don't know the answer, but we can find out.
Because I can see the value of hiding specific report types from certain people and individuals.
I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, yes, it's basically it's criteria based, but you can get down to user level.
Okay.
But I'll have to confirm that. So.
I have here a new user group member.
There you go.
Yeah.
Look at her.
Hi, everybody. Look, everybody's saying hi to you,
She's
Stella.
blazing trails.
I see you're bringing in the big guns.
Yes.
Nice.
All right. All right.
All right.
Go back. Bye.
Let's keep
Oh,
going.
I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?
Oh.
All right.
All right. Okay. Here's another important one, everyone. It's not going to sound important until we talk about some of the implications here. So there's an analytics update coming in the next release, and this update will allow users to do inline editing of fields from reports. Now, I know most people are going to hear that and say, hey, that's actually really cool. That's great. Here's the downside, or the potential downside. For whatever reason, there are some scenarios that we have all, I'm assuming at least all, come across where we have done what I like to call security via obfuscation. That means we don't have good permission sets or profiles with good granular, although you shouldn't use a profile for FLS or OLS, but we've all seen these scenarios where we don't have good FLS or OLS, and we've just simply said, you know what, that field is not going to be on a page layout. I'm not going to worry about security. Nobody will ever find it or be able to do anything with it.
I've never done that.
Congratulations.
For the record.
Now, all of John's former clients will be able to update those fields. So there are some pretty serious implications here, again, from a security perspective, because people can absolutely build reports, bring in fields that they have access to that they just couldn't get to easily before, and start doing bulk updates.
The other thing is that,
because I obfuscated them. My God.
Exactly. Well,
the
it's
other
hiding
thing
in
is,
plain sight.
once you enable editable reports in your org, it's every report.
Yeah.
You cannot say only some reports. You can't. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's great. I mean, honestly, it's great because it's really useful in some cases, but it just feels too like all or nothing.
Yeah. So make sure your security looks good. All right. Another small quality of life change, although honestly, this one's pretty big. So in this next release, dashboards will have dynamic gauge charts. I think they go GA. They might have been in pilot or beta in the last release, but I think they're now officially GA. So what this allows you to do is set your gauge and basically the breaks of the gauge based on data in your report. So instead of having to hard code each break, and if you ever needed to change it, it would be dynamic based on data or user, you're cloning and creating a bunch of different components, you can now bind a field in your report to your gauge, and it will make your charts dynamic with dynamic breaks. I think this is actually really cool, and it's cut down on a lot of repetitive components in dashboards and having to split dashboards, at least for several customers that we work with. So it's a nice little update.
Absolutely.
And that's it for the admin side. There's lots of other great stuff in the release.
He was going to say something.
He was going to say release notes. There's a lot of extra and wonderful, great stuff because it's.
There's a lot of other great stuff in there.
Yeah. I think when I downloaded the PDF, it was something like 500 and some odd pages long or something ridiculous like that.
Which is standard.
Standard, yeah. But I mean.
Hi, Adam. Welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
We heard you say there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Perfect. That's it. I actually just stopped talking at that point. So we're good. Yeah.
I wondered about that. Anyway. All right, well, let's get into the next part of it. For those of you who don't give a flying rip about programmatic concerns like me, you're feel free to drop off, although you'll miss some great conversation. So
don't drop off.
Don't drop off.
You want to hear about some of these things at least.
I think so, because on slide 28, you're going to hear about something that, Ohad was already alluding to, but, Ohad, you should review it. All right. let's talk about Experience Cloud real fast. There's just a couple of different things. Actually, there was a lot of Experience Cloud updates. And again, at the end of this whole deck, we'll give you the link to the release notes. And I encourage you definitely go in there and just not only review and make sure that we were actually accurate about what we're reporting, but there's actually a lot of things we're not even covering. But these are some of the things that just caught my eye just in the Experience Cloud area. The first one is awesome. I really did have a need for this about 6 months ago. And it basically says, hey, once you through with your Experience Cloud, you can turn it off and park it and put it away and make sure it doesn't come back. So this has been in beta for a little while, and now it's GA. There are a couple of cool new components that can be added to Experience Cloud pages. The overlap and card layout components, they're good. They're going to be interesting as far as giving you different options as far as how to lay things out. And obviously, as the name implies, the overlap allows you to sort of get that splash so that you can go overlap some images and stuff like that. So the language selector component now gives you the ability to actually change the language on the fly in the Experience Cloud. And there's also this columns component. And what was it about the columns component? I put it in there. It's a new columns component. Crap, what is it? I will get back to you on what that columns component is. It's a really cool new feature, but you got to read the release notes to that. Some of the other cool little features that you're going to be able to do is, hey, Salesforce acquired Slack not too long ago. Well, sure enough, you can now use Slack as a single sign-on identity provider. And you can use it both internally as well as on your Experience Cloud. You can secure personal information fields. And so what this is talking about is, say you wanted to basically hide the email address from prying eyes. You can set it up so that the email address, or maybe the last name or the first name or something like that, just certain fields that normally you would be able to edit, you can actually hide those and secure them and obfuscate them onto the Experience Cloud. And then the one that I think was going to be quite interesting, and I brought it in here, is the run flows as guest users is being deprecated. And I don't, guys and Lacey, I don't know if you guys have run into this or not. Again, going back to the idea that we all do practice really good, proper things, I would think this would actually impact some people. And so anyway, just a heads up.
So you will no longer be able to use flows as in an unauthenticated community?
That is what I'm reading. It, of course, was extremely verbose about about what they were talking about and intended here. So, but it did
that is really big.
Yeah. So, and when I say extremely verbose, I'm being, no, it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of information about it and implications or anything like that. So it could be interesting. So they did make a point to say that it's definitely going to be removed in the summer 22. So
wow. So
something to get onto. Yeah.
I definitely missed that when I was reading the release notes. So I'm glad you highlighted that.
Well, I'll say this, this release notes was sort of an exercise in digging through, because some of these things were just like buried in the thing. So anyway, when it comes to development and as far as Lightning components, there's, go ahead and click the next thing. The UTAM beta or pilot and now beta, now generally available. UTAM, if you're not familiar with it, obviously, as it says right there, UI testing automation model. It's a concept about how to structure UI pages. If you're, instead of trying to work directly with the DOM, it sort of translates it into a JSON object that you can more easily work with and consume. And so that's going to help streamline your UI unit tests. And it's basically Salesforce has adopted this UTAM standard, and as talk about right there, to learn more, go to the utam.dev website to get more information about it. I haven't personally played with this. I know that it's there, and UI testing is one of the things I got to get into later this year, but I'm not there yet. So, but just it's GA, and it should prove to be a whole lot easier to work with as far as UI testing, because that's been somewhat of a black hole in the world of Lightning components. So next click, please. So, basically this is a very deep subject called the Lightning Web Security. And the Lightning Web Security is now, if you're familiar with the Lightning Locker service or the Locker service in general, that was the old tool that was, or an approach and standard to secure your web components, especially when we were working with Lightning Aura components. Now, the Lightning Web Security approach and architecture is a whole lot more flexible as far as what it can do. It's a very deep subject. There was a lot of material about it in the release notes, and there's even more material. I think I put the reference, the very bottom bullet point. Take a look at the Lightning Web Components Developer Guide, and in there's a huge section about Lightning Web Security. This will be the newer standard going forward for all LWC work, and if you're into the Lightning Web Component development and you need to get by, especially security reviews for managed packages, you're gonna want to look into this big time. The second bullet point just states that the Locker service is still the de facto standard for the old Aura components. So don't forget the Locker knowledge that you have, but just heads up. So next slide, please, or unless there's a question.
I just wanted to hop in really quick. So the confusion that we had about the run flows as guest user,
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah, so they're getting rid of that permission. Instead, they're moving to a more granular, like flow by flow, access by access. So guest users will still be able to run flows. It's just gonna not just be like a blanket, sure, your guest user run a flow.
That's what it was.
That's what's happening.
Thank you. I was just reading the same thing, Lacey. You beat me to it.
Cool. Literally same page.
I'm glad you spoke up. Anyway, the next thing this is actually kind of an interesting development here. If you've got any kind of MuleSoft experience, obviously Salesforce acquired MuleSoft a couple of years ago. And there's been various discussions about how to incorporate and merge the two technologies together. And this is probably one of the first real merging of the two technologies. DataWeave was, or is, the language that MuleSoft developers use to do data transformations. So I want to take a CSV file and switch it into a JSON, and maybe a fixed width data structure and switch it out to a CSV file, whatever the transformation is. That's been extremely difficult to do in a robust fashion on the platform, especially in Apex. And so what they've done is they've taken the DataWeave Java runtime logic and information, and they've incorporated as sort of a first tier piece of metadata. And so what you're going to end up doing is, if you're familiar with DataWeave scripts, it's very straightforward. It's very easy to do. It's very easy to pick up. Not quite Apex, but it's kind of Apex-ish. And what it allows you to do is you'll craft a DataWeave script, put it as a piece of metadata in your project. And then once you load it up into the org, it's accessible from an Apex object. And so what you're able to do is take a data feed coming in from some integration service API, and then take that and then run it through the transformation service that you've created in DataWeave, and out comes a series of S objects, among other things. So it's a much faster approach to doing this. I've seen some demos. And if you would, go ahead and click the next space.
I would.
Yes. So we are going to have, this will be the primary topic for the developer user group meetup in February. So for those who want to hear more information about it, we'll talk about that towards the end of the thing. Told tonight. So blah, I'm getting tongue-tied. Next slide, please. Another cool little enhancement. This is, you're either the kind of guy like me that's very excited about this, or you really could care less about this next thing. There, we've had interfaces in the class structure of Apex for quite some time. There are some use cases, especially if you're dealing with frameworks, especially if you're dealing with generic
patterns.
frameworks, enterprise patterns, which anybody who knows me, that's all I do and that's all I love. It'd be kind of cool to dynamically figure out how many classes are actually working with that interface that you prescribe, and then you want to take action on all those or maybe you want to run or execute all these different ones that are available. Now, there's never been a way to do it in the Apex language. There's been ways to do it in .NET and Java for years and decades now. And so this is the first implementation. Go ahead and click the next part and show you how this really works. There's a new object called the Apex type implementer, and it's basically just an S object that's available in the org. And really all you got to do is just run a query. And so I've given this the basic SQL query here to run against Apex type implementer, and you specify the interface name that you're kind of interested in, and then the is concrete basically is computer speak for give me the classes that actually implement that interface. And that list of Apex type implementers will have among other things, like I said, the class name and maybe the prefix, the namespace prefix if you needed it. And you could then do like the system.type class to instantiate these classes on the fly from these class names. So this is going to be it's going to open up a couple more things. This is getting more and more, this is moving Apex more and more into true reflection type mode. And reflection is basically, it allows the language to inspect itself and then create options and features that are from there. So again, if this is not your cup of tea, that's fine. This is my cup of tea. I'm definitely into it. And so it's going to be in it. So next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about packaging. There's some things going on in packaging. Most of the changes in packaging were for ISVs and managed package creators. The first one talks about, of course, there's some new things around field restrictions and scoping rules. Those are now allowed to be added to second generation unlock packages, really all packages. Actually, you know what? I don't know. I know it's for unlock packages, you can include it in it. So those are some new metadata types that recently showed up on the scene, and now you're able to put them into unlock packages. The other pieces are the managed package world. The managed package world, you have to specify who is the predecessor, the previous release that you gave to the public. And that's when that term ancestor is all about. And there's been some consternation in the managed package space about how to specify and getting it right. So they've cleaned up that quite a bit, so that the ability to specify package ancestors using a couple more keywords, a little bit more intuitive way about how to do that. And then the last cool thing that OHOT, I'll guarantee you know an ISV that would love to do this next piece, is they can now remove metadata components from a released managed package. So that's what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one, right? I mean, it's been a long time where, you know, new versions could introduce, is that what I'm thinking, where you can introduce new metadata, you can remove them? And now
you can remove, yeah. So before if you've released a package and you've had a field or an Apex class or a web page, a VF page or whatever, you would never be able to remove those components a lot of times. And they've been slowly over the years relaxing the restrictions on removing those things. And now they're providing the ability to allow you to just basically remove components that you're no longer interested in holding in the package from that. Yeah, so it's going to keep those packages, clean, fresh, and not a lot of trash or anything like that.
Just random question, because I'm curious now. Do you actually have to specify the metadata in the package that needs to be removed, or is it just a gap analysis to say the previous package included this, the new package doesn't, that means it must be removed?
Closer to the latter.
Okay.
So when you're working with second generation packaging, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have a project next to you, and it's going to have all the metadata. And so you're going to pull that metadata, say the foobar object or something like that, you want to get it out of the project. You're going to delete it from your source code. And then the next time you run the next package version create, it's just not going to be there. And so the subsequent deployment into any of the subscribers that previously had an earlier version, that metadata is either going to be completely removed from the client's environment, or it'll be released from the package. And so it'll be in the client's environment, but it'll be up to the client's admin to remove it. For example, data tables, data S objects are going to be released from the package and available to the admin, and he can delete if he wants. Because all too often the subscribers or the clients of these packages build processes on top of it, and so you want to keep that metadata there.
You
if it's
can't
being
just
utilized.
necessarily remove it blindly.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to even remove it blindly, and so that makes it easy. Forgive me, I'm going off the screen real quick because my dog wants to get out of the room.
I have more questions, but I won't hold up progress for my questions.
Okay, well, I mean, it's up to you. So let's get into a little bit of platform events. I love platform events as well. This is a really interesting feature here. If you've done much work with platform events, and I'm assuming if you don't know what platform events are and you want to know, then speak up, and that's fine. We'll talk about what platform events are. But if you've done a lot of work with it, and they can get, the platform event buses can get very chatty. What I mean is lots of messages, lots of different messages being funneled through one or a couple of platform event buses. And then the logic that's listening to it, so the subscribers to those platform events have to a lot of times filter through things. And people have, developers have had to get creative about how they're going to filter through these platform events. This is an interesting idea that where you can declaratively set up channels, and that's what this new feature is about. And you can assign, when you create the platform event, you can assign it to a specific channel. And so your listening logic only has to listen to a specific channel that it's interested in. And so it's a great way to sort of tune out the noise and just get to the real meat of the messages that you're looking for.
So within the bus, you have multiple channels. You can define multiple channels.
Exactly. That's what I'm understanding. I still need to see it myself, but this is what I've been reading about it. You're able to declaratively set up filters, and I list a couple of different filters. There's filter where the channel is like this, or the support for the or and not logical operators. And then basically I want to set up a channel that filters on any messages after X date or something like that.
So are the channels all defined in XML, or how? Because I'm not seeing it in the UI.
I'm going to say it's a metadata type, or it's going to be in the platform event bus metadata itself. That's a good question. Adam, can you look up in the metadata API?
I'm looking at the release notes right now. Also,
yeah, well, but the metadata API developer guide would have platform event channels, and I suspect that's where it's going to be hiding. And the metadata developer guide has already flipped to Spring 22. So
I'm looking.
Yeah. The last bullet is, while this is still in beta, they're only supporting the Comet D subscribers. So this is again, if you're subscribing to platform events from other systems, most likely you're doing it from the Comet D protocol. Listening to these platform events channels via Apex triggers or flows, not supported yet. They will by the time it goes GA. So interesting little feature.
Yeah, I'm reading it. It's interesting. Absolutely, it is. It does look like a metadata type, and it does look like only Comet D subscribers. So Apex subscribers and flows and processes cannot access the channels.
It's still in beta, so that's fine. This is where they're getting in. I mean, the Apex triggers and flow subscribers are just variations of the base Comet D, so that this totally makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all righty. Next page, please. And let's go. Okay, so this is one of the examples of things that was buried in the release notes, and I didn't catch it the first two passes through this, but I did eventually capture it. In the Apex objects, there's some Apex classes out there. One of them is called Describe S Object Result. If you're familiar with that, it's a way to get all kinds of vital information in Apex about a specific S object. So with that Describe S Object Result class, I can look and see exactly how a data table S object is set up, and I get all kinds of information about it. What has been lacking up until now is this idea of does this table have a corresponding history table? Does this table have a corresponding share table? So if you, the history table, if you turn on field history, what happens in the background is that, Salesforce will actually set up the same object, but it'll be suffixed with the word history. And so you can actually query that through SOCL and other things like that. And the same is true when you play with the org-wide default on a custom S object or an S object. If you make the org-wide default say private, then there's this like shadow object. It's the share object, and basically it holds all of the information about visibility and sharing to the parent S object that you're dealing with. And so what these two methods really give you access to is dynamically determining are these objects and whatever other associated objects are available for this primary S object that you're interested in. So then you can pivot your code based on whether or not they've got sharing turned or the org-wide default set to public read write, which would basically hide or get rid of the equivalent sharing object or not. And so it gives you a little more flexibility to adjust based on what's happening with the way that the admin might tailor his approach. So anyway, if you're already interested in this or not, and if you're not. So move on to the next one, please. This next one though, I'm very excited about. One at a time though. Let's do this a little bit slower. If you're an Apex developer out there, have you ever had to craft custom logic to figure out what the domain name is? What the domain name is for either your Experience Cloud or for your sandbox or for your Visualforce page or the Lightning runtime, or there have been, I can't tell you how many different utility methods I've set up over the years to get at this basic information. And so I might have the system.url class, which tells me what current URL I'm on in the application, but parsing that URL has just been tedious as all get out. And so now they've come up with this new system domain class. And with it, it has various methods to get domain type. And there's a whole enum talking about all the different types that it has. So you're either on the document force domain or the Experience Cloud domain, and there's, I think, 12 options or something like that. And Ohad, go ahead and click one at a time, please. Some of these other ones, yep, keep going. There's get the my domain name. So if I'm in an org and I want to get at the actual my domain section of it, so I can use the get my domain to do that. Here's the one that I love, get sandbox name. I cannot tell you how many different ways we've hacked at the URL to try to say, okay, which sandbox am I really in? Here we go. We have a first class method to get it right at it and no fuss or anything like that. And we can even now get at the package name. And so if a package is installed and code is running in the package, you can actually detect whether or not it's being run from a managed package section. So some pages might be running from, say, DocuSign managed package versus just the standard URL and stuff like that. So this is a wonderful, cool little thing. Gives you so much access to the information, and we don't have to invent this logic anymore. Click to the next page real fast. Yeah, that too. And this corresponding domain creator class, it basically does the reverse and allows me to get, assemble the various domains that I would be interested in based on the information from that is thing. So these are some of the examples. So I could do the first example talks about, getting my domain host name. So I can just get the domain creator and create, set up a string And then from there, I can also get it for UAT. And just, again, this will be the tool going forward about how to assemble the domain name so that we can set up a full URL string so that we can go forward from there. So this is going to be a very useful set of classes. Very excited about these. And let's go into the next section. We've already talked about this, but again, it was was elsewhere listed, and that is Slack is now an available IDP. So if your organization's interested in doing that, by all means. This is Ohad's favorite because this is slide 28, and this really shocked me a little bit that they were. Actually, it didn't shock me because the whole approach of using the username and password in the URL. For those of you who don't know, it is highly insecure. For those of you who don't know, there's always been this hack so that you could create a URL, log in salesforce.com, and then just add the 2 parameters at the end, USR and PWD. And what it would do is it would log you into that website. So here's the link, and you would log in, and everything's out. That is immensely insecure. There are, among other things, system logs that track every request against a website, and your password is in plain text and things like that. And so it travels across the internet, and there's just so many different ways that this could be hacked. So they are getting rid of this going forward. So, granted, Ohad and Adam and I definitely are going to hurt, and we're going to have to find alternate ways to get into orgs, but that's a whole different story.
Password manager is the name of the game.
Yes, password manager.
Enabling a new industry in our world.
Well, the password managers, and then there's also a cool little technique with the Salesforce DX CLI. You can hand it off, and so, but it gives an encrypted. Basically, the CLI will give you an encrypted token, and you can hand that over to Adam, and he could set it up and then get access without knowing the username.
More effort to get that set up.
Of course, the more security you have, the more effort you have.
Yep.
The least effort you have, the less secure it becomes. So that's always been true.
Always been true. You're right.
I mean,
my point is, compared to a password manager, which is also secure.
Oh, you'll not agree, but then that's the last thing I started caught my eye was they're going to change a little bit about how they update the email address and then reset the passwords. And so they want everybody to have the email address properly verified first before you can change your password going forward. And so they will actually, I think the new scenario will actually send you out a password verification link or something like that, email. Yep. And then once you're verified, then it'll let you go through the password change process. So again, this is just, tightening it up, making sure that you're actually got a valid, up-to-date email before they go into the password dance, but still something to be thinking about. Next page, please. If you're into Salesforce Shield, if you're into it, and if you're playing around with it, this is actually a very cool feature. So Salesforce Shield, part of Salesforce Shield is about event monitoring. And so what event monitoring will do is literally it will just track all the different types of events that are happening in the org. And if you ever have to log into and download those Salesforce Shield logs, you're talking about literally gigabytes of data and CSV files coming down. And one of the issues that's always been around is like, okay, this is great, we're capturing all this data, and that's fabulous, but I would like to respond to it in real time, especially if I'm getting if there's data that sort of indicates some sort of hacking attempt or some sort of malicious action. So this is a very cool feature. What it is basically it will spawn these 4 different events that you can then set up, in this case, a flow to respond to that platform event. So flows that you would trigger normally with platform events. If you have Salesforce Shield enabled in the org, then you have these 4 triggering events as well available to you. And then that's kind of cool because then you can set up and take automated actions, deactivate users, reset passwords, or even set up cases so that somebody can actually dig into this a little bit. Of course, I hate this feature because I think this is the first new feature that was actually released to Flow, but is not yet available in Apex.
So I'd like to point out that you've said that several times over the past few years.
I have.
There have been a
But-
couple other features, I think, that have come to
Yeah, but
Flow
I've
first.
already forgotten all of those.
So you
this is
cannot-
the one that remember.
You cannot subscribe to this platform event from a trigger from Apex?
You cannot, and the reason is, I actually spoke to the Apex product manager, and he said, yes, you can't do it just yet. It's coming. The team that was for platform events had to not only set this up, but they also had to set up an extra piece that would make this feature testable from Apex unit testing. And they didn't get that latter piece in position, so it can't be released just yet to Apex side. It's going to be, it is probably going to be in the next release, but I was like,
Thank goodness we don't have the right test classes for flows.
oh God, don't get me started. You really are pushing my buttons tonight. All right. Anyway, but no, this is going to be, I mean, from a event tracking and security management, this is going to be cool. All right, let's talk about Salesforce CLI because there have been lots of cool little updates. If you weren't aware of it, in October 2021, Salesforce announced that they're actually making 2 different CLIs now. And so if you're working with the Salesforce DXLI, most of the time you're dealing with the SFDX command. What you haven't probably been aware of or seen too much is there's actually a new command sequence, and it's called the SF CLI. And the reason what this second CLI is all about is, again, they've acquired MuleSoft, they've got the Heroku CLI, and now they've got the cool Salesforce DX CLI. And they've got all these different CLIs, and they were like, why are we maintaining all these different ones? So the SF, short for Salesforce, is going to be the one CLI to rule them all, as it were. And so they have really started working hard to making this happen. There's been a lot of work that they've been doing as far as cleaning up the old Salesforce DX commands and making them universally plug and play in both the new CLI as well as the old one. A cool little feature.
Wait, John, does that mean that SFDX CLI will go away at some point?
At some point, the SFDX will go away, the Heroku CLI will go away, and the MuleSoft CLI will go away. And while Slack has been a recent addition, and Slack just in December released their own Slack development CLI, I suspect that it eventually will go away in favor of the Universal Salesforce CLI.
But wait, John, does that mean that
yes.
I need to install a new CLI on my computer?
I don't know why, because you've already installed the SF CLI. Because when you install the SFDX CLI, you automatically install the SF CLI.
Oh, good. So I already have that.
You already have it. You already take that.
You like my acting?
I love it. It's very good. You're really good about this. So.
But wait, John. No, I'm kidding.
But wait. And so up until December, if you wanted to know, you religiously would update your CLI every week by SFDX update, because you were wonderful people that stayed on the latest release and you didn't let it wane. But you always wondered, hey, I'm upgrading from one version to the next. What's actually being upgraded? What are they doing to my CLI? Now, they will, when you do the update, you will actually see the release notes for this next version of the CLI. And if it happens real fast and you didn't pay attention to it, you can always go back to these new commands, the SFDX, what's new? And it will show you the release notes for all the different things. And that's kind of cool, because then you can see what new features or bugs that you've been sort of watching because you're pissed off that there's a bug in the CLI that you didn't like. But anyway, so yeah, the what's new app is kind of cool. Ohad, hit the spacebar twice more, please, and get to the next 2 bullet points. So, and when I say the next 2 bullet points, you gave me the 3. All right, that's fine, cool, whatever. That's fine, go ahead and break it down. That's fine, give me those 2, that's fine. So, there has been a concept in the CLI called source tracking. And so the source tracking is that feature that allows you to make all kinds of edits in your your scratch org, and later in source tracking enabled sandboxes, and not pay attention at all to what it is that you've been changing. And so what you've been able to do is force source pull and force source push, and it would actually just keep track of all the different deltas and all the changes you've made in your org, and it bring it down to your source control and vice versa. The mechanism that they were using to keep track of all the different items was, shall we say, homegrown and slightly kludgish, all right? So they've been working secretly on a new version of the force source push commands and the force metadata deploy commands. And they've named them, obviously, force source beta push and force metadata data deploy. And fundamentally what this is going to be different, it's a different way for them to store and track all of these deltas between your local source code and the org that you're working with, the scratch org or the source enabled sandbox. And if you're really interested in the inner workings, they're actually creating little mini Git repositories in your project, and they're going to crack them that way. And so it's very interesting technology that they're doing. It's definitely going to be far more robust as far as the tracking mechanism going on. They didn't want to necessarily drop this change in on everybody without really testing this. In talking to one of the the engineers at the CLI team, they apparently tried to do that, drop a new feature and a change in April of last year, and they earned more hate mail from the Salesforce community than they could deal with. So they've learned their lesson. They're going very slowly on this one. So they put it into these betas, and when they're really certain they're going to go ahead and just change the force source push and the force metadata or NDAPI deploy commands, and they're going to point them to this new logic. And then when that happens, they're going to take they're going to create two new commands called force source legacy push and force NDAPI legacy deploy when they're ready to really switch these over. Go ahead and play around with this if you're really interested in that. Two things to note. If you go ahead and play with this, do it exclusively in that project. Use that exclusively in the project. Don't mix between force source push and force source beta push in the same project, or you will get all kinds of funky results. The second piece of this is these new beta commands are not hooked up into VS Code. And I dare say that they're not hooked up into Illuminated Cloud either, or any of the other major IDEs out there. So if you're going to do this, you're going to play with the CLI directly to work.
Oh, you mean through the menu selections?
Yes, exactly. So just keep that in mind. But the last thing is, again, there's a change in the force source beta push. There has been, if you have multiple package, so if you set up your project JSON, the sfdx-project JSON file, you can set up multiple source paths, if you will, in your project. There's been some confusion through the years, or I won't say through the years, in the last 2 years, about which of these source projects get deployed first. And so one thing that they've been toying with is actually just scooping up all the metadata in each of the different source locations or the package directories and bundling it all up and just doing one single deployment out to the scratch org with all of the metadata at once. It makes it faster, but then there's also some erroneous results that can happen depending on the complexity of your project. So what they've added is they've added a new value that you can set in your project JSON, this push package directory sequentially. And so what you do is you add that option into your project JSON file, the new command will actually behave like the all, it'll actually push the package directories one at a time into your org. And sometimes that's the best mode. So just be aware of that. And then the last cool little thing that you can do with the CLI, if you would, just hit it. There you go. And that is you can assign perm set licenses now from the CLI. Whereas, you know, you could do permission sets and permission set groups. And so
where is that? Am I missing? Did I skip
yeah,
something?
it was on the previous page.
Oh.
It's the very bottom element of the CLI,
Sorry.
you know, because, you know, I know you want dinner and you want to get out of here. So let's go ahead into the next slide real fast.
No, now I'm staying here. Tell us more
Okay,
about the
okay.
perm set licenses from CLI.
Just, I mean, again, it's another feature that allows you to go ahead, the admins to go ahead and do it. So interesting. I need to do that. True. Anyway, so if you want to learn more about any of these release notes, there is, we've talked about it a couple. There's a community group that's available, the Release Readiness Trailblazers. There's the release notes URL. I never use that URL. I just go type Salesforce release notes spring 22 and I go right to it. And then Salesforce themselves are going to probably go into more depth than Lacey, Adam, Ohad, and John did tonight. And these are the dates that they're going to go and do that. So you can go to the release readiness event and sign up for them and go hear people that actually know what they're talking about as far as all these new features and cool features and things that we haven't even talked about tonight. Because again, the release notes are some 500 pages long.
At the very least, you'll hear about all of the stuff that we didn't talk about because it costs extra.
That is true. Yes, very much so.
So there's that.
At the very least.
At the very least.
This is the release notes review that you get for free. Okay. And the next slide, if you would, please. This is just a nice little graphic about the timelines. And again, the deployment dates for all the major production orgs are February the 4th and February
The 11th.
the 11th. Yeah, or it's late at night. So actually, it's different depending on where you are in the world. But yeah, it's going to happen in one of those 2 weekends. Yeah. And with that, we're at the question slide. So anybody got any questions? You know, anybody want to talk about anything? You know,
What is your favorite new feature that you've heard of tonight?
yeah. I've already told you it's the Apex type implementer because I want to know the classes that are implementing my interface, but that's just me.
That's literally just you. Chris built it for you.
He did. Chris is the director of the
Apex.
no, it's more than that. He's got the promotion now.
Oh, right. Yes, he did recently.
Yeah, he's now got all the different programming languages under his purview now.
Poor guy.
So, I'm telling you. So cool. All right.
Any
Anybody else?
questions, anybody, about anything you've heard? Anything you'd like to add, ask, remove?
So, Ohad, let's go to the next slide real fast. And so again, if you want to stay in touch with the various user groups in Richmond, these are the good ways to see what's going on. And last, let's do for the developer user group, let's do a promo. We were talking about the Dreamweave or DataWeave.
Dreamweaver. I like
Dreamweaver.
Dreamweaver is something else.
Dreamweaver. Yeah, that's old school. Let's go.
That's very old school. Anyway, sorry. In late February, we're going to have the developer user group, and we're going to have a guest speaker, and this is going to be Daniel Bollinger. So Daniel Bollinger, if you're not familiar with, he is the director of the Apex product, and he has been a longtime Salesforce MVP, good friends with Ohad and Adam and myself for many years. And
good guy.
Literally,
Really
yeah,
good guy.
he's an excellent guy. He lives in a very somewhat obscure town in on the South Island of New Zealand. I know exactly where this guy lives, and it's you know.
John is a stalker.
Well, I mean, I used to live in New Zealand. So I've been to where he lives, but I mean,
I know exactly where he lives, and
well,
I can tell you what he's wearing.
I know exactly where you live too, but that's a whole different story. But no, he's going to talk a lot about the new data we featured, give some examples, and talk about it. And he's also hinting that he's going to give a little bit of a reveal on some of the Apex goodies that are kind of made up in the near future for us. So anyway, look for that announcement. We should probably have that out by the end of the week. So, and with that, that's it. Last slide.
Lacey, do you have anything else planned in the near future?
Yeah.
Not yet. I think we're looking at some of the upcoming Salesforce programming and seeing kind of what good, fun stuff we have to, hang out as a community.
Cool.
Good.
Yep.
Please let us know.
And this is being recorded, so I'm officially on the hook for it now, but flow training, I promise, is coming. We talked about it so long ago, and then we all went remote, but be it virtual or maybe by some luck, we can all get together at some point. There will be a couple flow training sessions this year. I promise.
Are we talking like a Salesforce Saturday thing? I would love to see that.
Let's see what we can figure out, and let's see what we can do safely that works for everyone. But yeah, absolutely. I know that flow trading was a hot topic long ago, and there's been so many enhancements. So I think we're way overdue, and I'm committing. It's on the record now. Flow training is coming.
You should have come back to Richmond long before now.
Well, was it really?
Long story.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long
story.
story. Yeah.
Oh, love it. We're glad that you are back. We are very much.
It's good to be back, and it's good to see. We had 15, I think, or 16 people on tonight, so this was a great turnout. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Very good.
That's all I got.
All right, everybody. With that, we shall release you back to your family day.
Yeah.
And to those of you
Kate,
who
tell
go
your dad
snowboarding
welcome.
tomorrow, skiing
Will do.
tomorrow.
And thank you
Oh
all.
my God, that just boggles my mind. Anyway, all right, folks, have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.